Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today we are here to talk to you about none other than the balanced data slates. These were dropped on just recently, about a day ago. Feels like so much longer, though, just because of all the conversations I've had with people and how much talk and diving deeper into these. Man, it feels like these things have been out for like a month, honestly, just through conversations with people and everything, and some of them being new whispers and rumors and things like that. And then now we see them. So, man, it just honestly feels like these things have been out for so long. But at the time of recording this video, it's only been like 24 hours for this recording or for these to come out. So now is my turn. I've spent some time, watched many content creators, and I will tell you, if you're looking for a deep, comprehensive dive into all of this and some translation on it, there are many wonderful content creators out there. I go to their pages as well, too, to hear their thoughts. Excuse me. But for this video, what I'm going to be covering is the armies that I play primarily on the channel. I'm going to try and get Lane next week so he can talk about some of his armies, like the Custodes, the Death Watch, Space Marines, and all those. For this video, we're going to touch base on the core rules. Then we're going to go into Grey Knights, Necrons, Admech, Orcs, and that'll be pretty much it. I said them all right. Grey Knights, Necrons, Admech, Orcs. Yeah, those ones. So those are going to be the ones that I'm going to jump into, and I'm going to discuss because those are the ones that competitively I can give a stronger feedback about what those things look like, since those are the armies I study and play. Excuse me. Whew. It's getting late at night here. I've been doing a lot of work, especially with the new job, a lot of research, just studying for with my new job, and studying all these new rules and new everything and the point changes, and getting ready for Battlegrounds and board games tomorrow night. That's going to be a fun tournament. It's going to be our last taste of Leviathan as far as the points are concerned, and our first taste of Pariah Nexus as far as the missions are concerned. So we'll definitely be able to report back to you about that one on Monday, once we get a chance to, we get the chance to play out the missions. So that's going to be pretty cool. They decided not to do all the points and stuff because of list submissions, and since they came out Thursday and the tournament was Saturday, that's where we're sticking. And I'm normally I would rather it just be all encompassing, especially studying these right now. But I'm happy that the tournament is not doing this because it will be my last hurrah with my Tomb Sentinels. Yeah, that's right. After this weekend, the Forge World Tomb Sentinels, the big centipedes, are out, moving those over to Legends. They are no longer part of the main Necron force, so competitively they will not be a legal model. Very, very sad. I love the centipedes, so hopefully, my fingers are crossed, that maybe we'll see something in the future where they'll come back in some capacity, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. But so here we are. We have the balanced data slates, and for those who don't know what the balanced data slates are, balanced data slate is Games Workshop's way to basically typically fix things. And I'm hesitating to say that because this time it feels a little different. A little different than some of the times we've seen in the past. Typically, the balanced data slates are Games Workshop's way to fix overpowered rules or broken mechanics, and all in all try and keep the game in line. For those who watch Marvel, trim the branches, as it would be. Prune the timeline. So, and that's typically what they use it for. But this is a little interesting, especially in the core rules. Now, we're gonna have to tag into. I'm gonna do another separate video, covering the points and the FAQ, because there is a lot in the FAQ. There is only going to be one thing from the FAQ I'm really going to mention in here. Two things. One will be the movement phase, because that movement has changed. But then we're going to do a more comprehensive guide, and we're going to talk about all that stuff here in the next coming week and go over some of the details and what that looks like, and maybe do some live playthroughs and show how these things function. But for right now, we're going to focus on the balanced data slate, as well as with the points and stuff like that. So but with the balanced data slate, we do get a little bit of changes to the core mechanics of the rules that make it almost not as if they're trying to fix some things, but just changing things to freshen things up a bit. And because it's a small tweak and it just kind of maneuvers kind of a resource management part of the game, I'm cool with it. I accept it, and I'm interested to see how it plays out, especially because of the what it does mean for the overall effects of some units, as well as what we end up taking. Battle line does have a boost as far as points and abilities and stuff concerned, like for scoring purposes. So some of this could help with that overall battle line boost. Now, the two things that are not included in the data slate that I want to talk about real quick. Number one is moving and pivoting. Pivoting has always been kind of a tough concept with 40K, just because of having to measure and where do you measure from and how this moves and that moves and everything. Now it's been kind of streamlined. Pivoting is a 2-inch penalty, but only for models that do not have round circular bases. This means that those models can just, the circular bases pivot for free. But anything else like a rhino, if you want to pivot, you will spend 2 of your movement inches to pivot that model. Now, like I said, we're going to do some examples with it in a later video. We can put this stuff out there, but this means that if you pivot twice in your move, you still only spend 2 inches. It's a one-time penalty, not cumulative. So that's a good thing. Number 2, doesn't matter how far you pivot. You want to turn the model 100% around for whatever reason, you can, and it's still just that 2-inch pivot. So, and that does with any unit that is not a round base. So we'll probably see that more with a lot of other things, a lot of other surfboard style bases, as well as, units that obviously don't, like flying bases and stuff like that. Now, it doesn't count for flyers, though. Flyers is completely different because flyers have their own rule. But that was one. And then number 2 is one that just makes me sad. Tank shock. Tank shock has now been completely changed. It no longer bases on your weapon strength. Instead, you spend a command point and you use the model's toughness. So bigger units, Stompa, Land Raider, things like that, are going to get more dice because they have a higher toughness. There also is no bonus for your toughness being higher or your strength as it was with the strength being higher. You don't get additional dice. So it is reducing the amount for the tank shock, but it's still there. It's still a strat. It's just not going to be as heavy hitting as it was before, when a Gorkanaut could come charging in and was basically throwing 20 dice because of the strength 18, and it's going to have a higher strength than anything's toughness. Which makes me sad because I loved it with my Dread Knights, but there's a lot of other interesting things that I'm very curious to see. So, all right, with that being said, guys, as always, please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell, get notified on all the content we bring you here. And let's jump over into the actual balance data slate. As I said, for starters, we're going to jump over into these core rules. So this is the big, this is going to be a big change to the game. And this is going to change a lot of list tech in a lot of different ways. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's not going to change much. This is going to change in a tremendous amount of ways, and it's going to be something you're definitely going to want to look into. I'm already looking into it and reevaluating the way we look at armies. First of all, modifying a stratagem CP cost. So in the past, originally you could, use a strat on a unit. It says, oh, you can reduce the strat to 0. Okay, free strats. Awesome. Then we got the first change, which said, no, you can only use the reduce stratagem to 0s on, what was it? I'm drawing a blank here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this, on what they were called, because it's saying battle line and battle line and battle line. But you could only reduce the strats of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm drawing such a blank on this one. Either way, you could only reduce the one type of stratagem. And I'm going to look it up because it's bothering me and I'm just drawing a complete and total blank. But you couldn't battle tactic. That's it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe out of everything I forget that. It's late. It's a late night. It's been a long week. And so much information just crammed into my brain and a tournament tomorrow. Ugh. It's gonna be such a fun weekend. Such a fun weekend, but man, is it my brain is on overdrive right now. All right, so battle tactic. It was used to be the only ones you could reduce it down to zero. So this limited what was getting that buff. On top of it, uh, that meant that the units that were able to get the reductions as well too were not always going to be able to use those stratagems per se. Maybe they won't target them, maybe they're not even any good. Well, now it's back to reducing anything, except instead of reducing it down to zero, instead you reduce it by one. This does mean that stratagems that cost 1 CP can be reduced down to zero, but it means that stratagems that cost 2 CP will cost you at least 1. Now, the other change was as well with the Callous Assassin's ability, Lord of Deceit. Each time an opponent targets an enemy from their army with a stratagem, if that unit is within 12 inches of this model, increase the cost of the stratagem by 1. This is different than what the Calidus did before, where it was called a Vect because of previous rules that we'd seen in the game of similar abilities, which is basically whenever your opponent used a stratagem, you would permanently increase it by 1. Now, this means that you can just you have a 12-inch or a 24-inch bubble, depending on how you want to look at it, to make someone's command points cost so much more, or their stratagem cost more. The issue I have with this is I feel like it was a little too short range. I feel like it should have been 18 inches. The Callous Assassin can pick up and can drop back down and be placed, and that's great. But the Callous Assassin has lone op, and if you're within 12 inches of your opponent, that means they're within 12 inches of you. And I think the stealthiness of the assassin aspect gets kind of lost when those two rules overlap like this, and I think 18 would have been fair and not make it all stratagems, make it once per turn or once per phase, maybe just once per player turn even, would make that still a strong ability and usable and not completely busted because still 18 inches. If you're landing within 18, you move 6 inches and now you're in range of her. So not the end of the world. That's my opinion. That's my hot take. Now, reducing any stratagem, that's going to be huge. Now we can go back and look at a bunch of those different characters, especially with all the battle line changes. Since basically battle line units get access to those characters that can reduce stratagem command cost. And that's going to be a very interesting place for a lot of units in some of these different detachments to be able to reduce stratagems and use stratagems on them for free, especially, like, again, with what battle line units can do. So I think this is going to be something that we're going to need to really, really go back and look over a bunch of the strats, a bunch of the abilities, and check over, which is nice because it's going to be a fresh look at some of these armies, detachments, and codexes over the next couple of weeks and months. So next up, though, with this, stratagems that can be used more than once per phase. And this is where it gets tweaked, because while you can reduce we can reduce any stratagem again. This is the part that says, and I'm not going to read all of it, but the basis of it is, you are not any ability that says you may use a stratagem even if it's already been used this phase. You can't do that anymore at all. You're not allowed. only time you can reuse a stratagem is if the stratagem is declared by name. An example is the Hexmark Destroyer. The Hexmark Destroyer specifically says you can use the Overwatch stratagem even if it's already been used this phase or this turn. So that one will allow you to do Overwatch a second time. Following the correct orders, you would have to Overwatch with something else first to then do this. I know that's factual. I know that's correct because you can't trigger the effect of using it even if it's already been used on him. It's not a hall pass. You have to go that direction. But nothing else. None of those. So any ability on any character that says reduce the CP and use it again if it has already been used, you can't do. So now it will be you'll be able to use a stratagem cheaper, but you're not going to be able to spam it around the field unless it gets called out by name. So that's important. Jade Fixic writes a battle become once per battle round. One unit from your army with this ability can use it. The target stratagem, if it does, reduce the CP of that one. Yeah. So basically, the last sentence just shows you what it's changing all those abilities to. Sorry, I glanced at it. I thought it said something else. Now, stratagems that prevent units from being targeted. This is a big one. This is a big one, and I think in the spirit of the game, this is a good change. There are a lot of stratagems that when you use it, it says that a unit that is targeted by a shooting attack, Canoptic Court has one, after it gets targeted, you spend a command point. Now that unit cannot be targeted unless it's within 12 inches of the enemy unit. That's pretty big. And now they've said that all those strats, any unit that uses that strat, or of any type in any army. The example they give is Grey Knights haloed in Soulfire. It's now 18 inches instead of 12. So it's not the full lone op. And I think it's good. It keeps in with the spirit of the game. We have this strat that now allows you can still be defensive with your units during the early portions of the game. But later in the game, you're not just popping this thing and right in someone's face and just messing up a tactical play because your army has access to a strat that is not a global strat. So I think it's still good. It's still solid because it helps you during the early goings of the game to not get blasted, but not so overpowered that you can't play the game and your opponent can play a cagey, uninteractive game and not let you do anything. The only one that's allowed to play a cagey, uninteractive game is Grey Knights. That's the only one. I'm just kidding. But seriously, though, it makes the game very, very uninteractive. And I think that's what they're trying to avoid. The Grey Knights do have have an army that they're able to be uninteractive in a lot of aspects of it. But it's one unit here, one unit there, and as those abilities get spent and as you burn them away, yeah. Plus, Grey Knights, we got a little bit of point increase. We'll talk about that when we get over there. And lastly, stratagems that add new units to your army. Can only use them once per game. Not stratagems that add models back into a existing unit, but specifically a brand new unit once per game. That's it. So all in all, right there, it looks like we are making some changes, some good changes. That's going to mix it up a little bit. It's definitely going to take a couple seconds to remember those while playing a game. But it's definitely going to be interesting because now it gives a fresh outlook, especially on leader characters and those leader characters that we're putting with some of these battle line units that we may be taking going into the Pariah Nexus missions. So now, we're going to jump over into the data sheets for the armies. And the first one is going to be the biggest one, Adeptus Mechanicus. Okay, this is interesting. Some of this I don't like. And then some of it's just going to be brutal. And I'm going to take some time and sit and look at this because, yes, AdMech will be coming back on the channel because this is very interesting. First, the change to Doctrina. So we have the Doctrina is an ability that you pick at the beginning of each battle round, and you pick which imperative you are in, Protector or Conqueror. Protector is defensive and shooting. Conqueror is aggressive and fighting. So the Protector imperative, you used to, if you were in the Protector imperative, you could trigger basically Armor of Contempt to reduce the AP of a weapon by 1 if you're within your deployment zone. That's been dropped. So instead, you will keep the ranged weapons equipped by models in this unit have heavy. So, first of all, just before we dig into this, Doctrina is just a keyword, basically, a keyword ability that the units have. Most of the units in AdMech have. And if they don't, there's ways for them to get it. Things like Castellan robots can take it out of the cybernetic cohort, for example. So this is something that once you declare it, you just have it. So the units all will just boom, weapons are all heavy. So like Skitarii Rangers, boop, the Revens are heavy. Improve the ballistic skill characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by models in the unit by 1. Now, ballistic skill, not to hit roll. So that means that those Rangers that were hitting on 4s now will be hitting on 3s. And if they sit still, they get the heavy bonus, so now they're hitting on 2s. I'll get all excited about that later. Let's finish this up. Each time a melee attack targets this unit, if that unit has the battle line keyword and or is within 6 inches of one or more friendly Adeptus Mechanicus battle line units, -1 to hit. So some combat defense with -1 to hit if you are a battle line unit or within 6 inches of battle line. Still the theme of the Mechanicus army being around battle line units. Now, Conquer Imperative, that one was you would get +1 AP when attacking units in your opponent's deployment zone, in their opponent's home deployment zone. That's been dropped. The part that stayed is that if you take the Conqueror Imperative, you won't have heavy, but instead you will get Assault, so you can advance and shoot. Improve the weapon skill characteristic of all melee weapons equipped by models in these units by 1. Things like Dragoons, 3s to hit, Castellan robots, going up by 1. I mean, there is a lot that will increase from that all because of it. And again, there are ways to have, it's like Cybernetic Cohort, one of my favorites. There's a strat that you just target a unit and they get both Doctrina. This would significantly help when you're trying to stay in one Doctrina for your army, but you have a close combat threat that you want to be in that Conqueror Imperative for that +1 weapon skill. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, if it has battle line or 6 inches from a battle line unit, improve the penetration characteristic of attack by 1. And this is just making an attack, so shooting or combat. That's pretty big. That's definitely a strong reason to switch over into the Conqueror. Like, you're going to lose some accuracy for those guns that you're shooting with, but you gain that extra AP. And especially if you're going into close combat with some of this stuff, yeah, that's a significant buff. And again, based around the battle line. And we'll be hearing some better close combat weapons here soon with a couple of units. Now, first things we look at, we're going to look at Belzeri's Call. Call's move went up to 8. And one of his abilities has changed, and it's interesting. So you have the Catacomb on Call, which is you get to pick one of 3 of them to be in effect. You pick at the beginning of the battle round or command phase. I have to double check. They might be command phase for that. And he has that into play, just like the Primarchs do and all that stuff. Similar thing. He's the Mechanicus Primarch, if you will. One of them while friendly Adeptus Mechanicus units are within 6 inches of the model, each time you take a battle shock or leadership test, that unit adds 1. So +1 for battle shock and leadership. Not the best. But what's interesting is when you do this, if you use this, you also give Call battle line keyword. That is going to be very interesting to see how that works out. Because Call being able to be battle line when using that ability could be one of those things that I don't even know. I don't even know where to think about that yet. I have to see that on the table with the cards, with everything right in front of me, and see how many times am I looking at Call and going, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to battle line you to score extra points. That's a very new one that we've seen a character that's able to gain a keyword with an ability like that. This in this fashion, especially when that keyword is one that can score points over the course of the game like that. I can't remember many units that could do something like that. Just gain a keyword in the middle of the game. That's crazy. That's crazy. I know someone might say flyers, but they'd be able to lose aircraft. But I feel like that was more losing aircraft ability. I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting. Now, one that I don't like is the change to the Iron Striders. Just because Iron Striders saw their time in the sun last edition, and here they are again. First of all, both weapons on the Iron Strider have sustained one, and they basically lost their twin linked function instead of getting extra shots. So the Cognis autocannon is now 4 shots, where the Cognis las cannon is 2. They're going to be all over the place. A bunch of people probably still have them from last edition running them, and we're going to see them again. At least a squad in every army. I mean, 6 las cannons coming across the field, especially when you look at this. Oh, +1 ballistic skill. Oh, I'm going to sit still because I got 48-inch rage. Hitting on 2s. That's going to be rough. Next up, Scorpius Disintegrator. The Thermite Cannon, which is the alternative to the artillery, the one that nobody modeled any of theirs with. Strength is getting D6 +1 damage. So we're getting some better anti-tank all around, which is definitely a soft spot that AdMech needed, but we're getting better anti-tank with our range weapons, and we'll talk about that. My choice is yet to come. But this one ain't bad. It's not bad. But the strength 12 is what leaves a bit to desire for me, because the bigger targets that we would want when you take the Scorpius tank, it doesn't have transport. It doesn't have very much elsewise. And that's your main cannon. The main cannon is wounding on 4s versus T12 units, which exist in a lot. And then things like the Monolith, it's wounding on 5s. It still leaves a bit to be desired there, especially for the points. Infiltrators now went up to 3 attacks for their weapons. Okay. Rust Stalkers went up to 5 and 4 attacks for their weapons, as well as going up to strength 5. This I want to look into Rust Stalkers a little more. I love the Infiltrators. They're great. But the 3 attacks doesn't change my thoughts on them. They are still a beautiful unit that does really well in many, many different aspects of the game. Having an extra attack is cool and very nice, and definitely I'm not going to be upset about that at all. But the Rust Stalkers were completely off of my menu. I'm very interested to see what we can do with them now. And then the Onager Dune Crawler. All the weapons have been modified in some way. I had to look this up. So the Daedalus Missile was 1 shot, now went to 2. That's pretty big. Especially, again, being able to get this, reduce this thing's ballistic skill and get this thing to really hit. The Icarus Ray puts out a lot of shots. And now that having 2 shots coming off that Daedalus Missile, granted it's only strength 10, which falls in that same kind of category of like, well, we need anti-tank weapons, and this is only a strength 10. Doesn't have the strength characteristic, but with how much volume of extra shots you have behind it, D6 +1 damage, same as the Thermite Cannon for the Disintegrator. I start feeling some way about it. Plus, remember, Dune Crawlers are really, really resilient. Eradication Beam. 2d3 attacks for both sides of the spectrum on the shots. If you fire it short range, you get 3 damage, versus shooting at longer range, you only get 2 damage. So this one's one you want to get closer. Not bad. Sustained D3 is nice, especially with 2D3 shots. So you can put out a lot of shots with this thing, as long as you're rolling sixes, you know? Typically, 2D3, if you roll 2 on both dice, you're looking at 4 shots. At that strength 9, AP 2 or 3, damage 2 or 3 profile, maybe 1 procs of 6. I mean, yeah, okay. And it's got blast, so you could pick up some additional shots. So this is, if we get into more of an infantry meta where we're dealing with a lot of Space Marine infantry, I could see this being the play. For me, it's all about the neutron laser. So neutron laser went to 3 solid shots. That's it. 3 shots. No roll, 3 shots. Love it. Good starting point. Okay. It is D6 plus 2 damage. Very solid. Strength 16, AP 4. This is the anti-tank, anti-armor gun that we need. I'm so glad I started working on these for my army and that I have 2 of them ready to go with the neutron laser. They will definitely be out there. The Doom Crawlers will be back. I really like the Doom Crawlers a lot, and I'll be excited to get those back on the table. And last is the Onager Heavy Phosphor Blaster, which initially I didn't like it. I I'd still feel like right now we're in a vehicle heavy meta, so you're probably not going to want to run this, but at least this gun, I can appreciate this gun now. It looks good. 12 shots on it, twin linked, so you're rerolling the wound. It ignores cover, strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage. And with all the other buffs we talked about, being able to increase the AP on this weapon, being able to get better ballistic skill, that's not bad. That's not a bad gun, realistically. For me, I'm going to be probably running Castellan Robots, so I'll have it on that side. But that's really not that bad. Like 12 shots off that thing, that's a good amount of shots. So it's going to be interesting to see, all in all. I'm looking forward to really diving back into AdMech and really looking at some stuff. All the points went up on everything. So it's going to change a lot of how things function, probably because now there is more killing power in the AdMech. I'm definitely interested, very curious to get them back on the table and see what they can do. And we'll be messing around with that here real soon. Now, the other ones are going to be much quicker because they're much shorter in all aspects. So one of the things I do want to discuss is coming up here. We got the Chaos Knights over here. So the Chaos Knights have the Super Heavy Walker ability. This ability is the exact same for the Imperial Knights. And this is, I don't like it. I'm not going to be shy about it. I don't like it in concept of what it does. I don't think this is the way you fix Imperial Knights. I think it will definitely help Imperial Knights. I'm not against helping Imperial Knights. I don't think this is the correct answer. So first of all, each time this model with this ability makes a normal move, advance, or fall back, it can move through models, excluding Titanic, and sections of terrain features that are 4 inches or less in height when doing so. So first thing is the 4-inch doesn't matter for models as long as the only thing it checks is if they are Titanic. It can move through models, excluding Titanic, and sections of terrain feature that are 4 inches or less in height. There might be some people that may rule that the models have to be 4 inches or less in height as well. Okay. Ask your TO on that one. Ask your TO which route they want to do. But that's not the crazy part. The second 2 bullet points. It can move within engagement range of enemy models, but cannot end that move within engagement range of a model. Okay, so you move over a unit, you have to fully clear them. Can't stop on top of them. Okay, we've seen that all before. The next part. It can also move through sections of terrain features that are more than 4 inches in height. But if it does, after it has moved, roll a d6, and on a 1, the model is battle shocked. What? What is that? Okay, so your Imperial Knight, if you have a 20-inch tall wall, your knights can go through it. So, what are you telling me? Are you telling me that the Imperial Knight is climbing this very large wall to get to the other side and is not losing movement? Well, that doesn't make much sense. So, the knight is lowering its shoulder and going through the wall? Okay, that makes a little more sense. Then why is the wall still there? That's the issue I have. That's what this, you roll a d6 on a 1, the model's battle shocked. Okay, whoop-de-doo. You can't use strats on it, it's OC0. This is silly. This is not the way that they should have fixed knights. I still think to this day, and I'm going to keep voicing this, the way you fix knights is early on in the edition when they could see, had true line of sight with runes because they were Titanic. It was effective and it was abused by other armies. Give knights the ability that if they are within 12 inches, if they're within 12 inches of a rune, they can treat it all as true line of sight. So now you can't hide behind it, and they can treat that entire rune as true line of sight. I think that would fix everything. That would fix it because now the knights still have to play the game, and if you're trying to hide behind the wall and not get hit at any point by the knights, they are still able to get you. They are still able to hit you, and they're able to do it once they get just within 12 inches. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense at all because if the knight is going through the wall, why is the terrain still there? So I really don't like this change. I'm definitely all about the fact of giving knights some more to work with to make them more fun, to make them more playable and competitive. This doesn't make sense. That's my opinion. That's my hot take. Next up, I want to talk about the Chaos Space Marines real quick. They have one change, and I'm very knowledgeable about this change. Warp Talons. So the Warp Talons were a unit that basically you could charge 30 Warp Talons, 3 10-man squads, into a single Space Marine. And as long as you're able to get engagement range, hypothetically get engagement range, with all 30 of those guys, charge. And then you're eligible to fight because you charged and you made a charge. The first unit kills them, and then you can pick these guys up and put them into strategic reserves because the other ones were eligible to fight, and the kicker was eligible to fight. Now, at the end of the fight phase, if this unit destroyed one or more units this phase and is not within engagement range, so now the unit needs to eliminate a unit and not be within engagement range. Bigger cadence. I don't think this is going to completely pull Warp Talons off Chaos's menu because that's still a strong ability, still a strong unit. But seeing 30 of them may be a little less. Maybe a unit of 10, maybe a couple 5-man scattered around for that ability. But now for cleaning things up, that's still a very strong ability to be able to drop in, clean up a weakened unit that's trying to run away from you, and then pick these guys back up and they're not out of the game. I can still see there's still some play with these guys. Just instead of seeing 30, might be seeing like 10, 2 5-mans, maybe a 10-man, much less numbers. All right. Scrolling all the way down here, we get the Imperial Knights, which once again, same ability with that crazy Kool-Aid man going through walls effect. And then we get to Grey Knights. So for Grey Knights, first, the positive. Weapons didn't change. Heavy Side Cannon, Demon Hammer, and Great Hammer, those changes from last time have stayed the same. Still ignore cover and AP2 on the Side Cannon. Still the boosted weapon skill on the Hammer and Greatsword. The Vortex of Doom, and this is a necessary change. Vortex of Doom is not allowed to snipe a character with Lone Op. Simple as that. Exclude this. You target a visible unit within 18 inches, excluding units with lone operative ability that are not part of an attached unit and not within 12 inches. So basically just says, hey, you don't override the lone op ability with this attack, even though it's not technically shooting. So That's the biggest change for this for Grey Knights. Later on, we'll talk about the fact of some point increases, but right now, that was it for this army. And then we move on to the last two, Necrons and Orcs. Well, Necrons, this one's real fast. We only have one change since the last time. All the other changes are still around, by the way. But the change from last time is for the Hypercrypt Legion. And this is a necessary one, I know. I'm sorry, guys. I know that I'm going to get some heat for this one, but there is no reason that Catans could bounce around the field like they were. And that's basically what this is fixing. And listen, Hypercrypt is still stupid powerful. Just now, it's less about stupid powerful, smack you with a star god. And you're going to want to see a little more of the tactics. And the monolith is still valid. And here's the place for your monolith to play. So Cosmic Precision is a strat that allows you to drop within 3 inches and be placed anywhere on the field. Now you cannot target a monster with it. So none of the Catans can be targeted by this stratagem. Now, does that mean... Now, realize this still, with the Hypercrypt, you can still select to pick a Catan up off the field and bring it on, but it would abide by normal strategic reserve rules, which means that you could still get it in your opponent's backfield, but you'd have to at least wait till turn 3 or later. And you're also coming on from board edges, which means that Catan is not just dropping on an objective marker and you're just taking it. So that's also going to leave some thoughts about it too, because now you're at least still going to have a turn before that Catan's really going to get into the heat of the action. I mean, stick a 9-inch charge. Yeah, you can do that. But the only one that can actually land on an objective for the most part is going to be the Transcendent Catan, because it has Deep Strike inherently. Otherwise, these guys come on from the board edge, and that's still a hell of a lot of speed to be able to bring these guys across the field and put them in a corner, or put them over there. Yeah, still very, very powerful. Just now they're not dropping anywhere on the field, and they're not dropping 3 inches away from your opponent in the corner of their table edge in their backfield and just waiting a turn and murdering their home field. Because that's everything they would do. These guys would just absolutely get in there and crush a home field objective. And lastly, for this video, the Orcs. So, first one, Mob Ment, is Green Tide. So, there's only one thing that affects my list, okay? But first one is Green Tide. So, the Green Tide gave you a 5-up invulnerable save. Now, they get a 6-up invulnerable save, but if the unit contains 10 or more models, and it's only for boys units, each time an attack targets a boys unit from your army that contains 10 or more models unit of 5-up invulnerable save. Before, you could reroll 1s for armor saves, and this got reduced down. Little too much. Not to mention if you drop the squad down to 9, and there's not as much of the mob mentality as they show it, now you're only looking at a 6-up invul, and select squad is going to get picked up a lot faster. Still got the 5-up invul, though, on a 20-man, which is pretty good. Just no reroll. Tide of Muscle. Add 1 to the charge roll. If the unit contains 10 or more models, you can reroll the charge roll. Before, it gave you a boost to your advance. I think it was reroll the advance and then 10 or more models, and you can reroll a charge. I believe that's what it was. So apparently that was an issue, and they toned that down. Go get 'em. This is the one where after you fight, you can then you must end its move as close as possible, close to enemy unit. After attacking unit has shot, you can make a go get 'em move. To do so, roll 1d6, and your unit can move a distance in inches to the result, but your unit is as close as possible, close to enemy unit. When doing so, models the move with engagement model. And if your unit contains 10 or more wounds, you can re-roll the d6. Okay, so what this was doing before was you would shoot, spend a command point, and because you had 20 guys, you just auto move 6. And I don't see anything in here preventing you from charging. So definitely pretty big. Now instead you could just re-roll the d6, so it's a little less reliable than the auto 6, which that's probably was too much. Mega knobs. We all knew this was coming. Mega knobs, whenever you'd wah, you'd have a 4-up feel no pain. Well, the mega knobs, not only did they increase your points, but now when you wah, you get a 5-up feel no pain as opposed to the 4-up. Still strong, but not unbreakable, which is kind of what those mega knobs felt like when I was playing them. It was like, oh, I'm gonna wah, and anyone who shot at them, I'm like, okay, you hit me with a las cannon, it did 6 wounds, and I just feel no pain 4 of them because I rolled hot. So your las cannon that you hit me with a 6 didn't even kill a knob. Yeah, rough beats, very rough beats. So, but a lot of that for the bully boys is just too much, and that feel no pain was just a complete and total brick wall. So that's what we're looking at for changes for the orcs. All right. One other little tidbit I'll throw out here before we go over the points, because it's going to be sad. It makes me sad because this is the last weekend I will get to run these things. A lot of Forge World units have left the game now, and we're going to talk about that when we go over the points later this weekend. And unfortunately, the Canoptic Tomb Sentinels and the Canoptic Tomb Stalker are gone. They are no longer part of the Necron lineup. This weekend will be the last time I get to use them. So, guys, wish those centipedes good luck. I'm going to send them out with pride. I want to come back here with a big W from this tournament with the Sentinels and get one last hurrah with the Sentinels. And that's going to be about it. And then they're going to go on the shelf. I'm still working on the Canoptic Court. I'm looking into, I'm not really sure in the future. I haven't decided yet if I want to start pushing into a battle line unit just to have one, because we do have very strong ones, especially with like Tesla Immortals, or if I just want to continue down this road and maybe throw something like a Hexmark in there to replace, because I'd like to have a Deep Strike unit in there still, and I don't immediately want to jump to Ophidians. I know how good Ophidians are, believe me, but I don't want to just jump right into them yet without investigating all my other options. So we'll see. We got time though. So that's about it. Like I said, subscribe, get notified on all the other content that we're going to bring you here, including when I go over the points. Get Lane over here. I'm going to get Lane to talk about the Space Marines and Custodes and all those, and we'll scan through it and talk about all the other factions as well too. So, all right, guys, that's it for me this evening. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll talk to you again soon.